On Jersey Magazine this morning, we have Mike Ham with us from Greetings from the Garden State, and we are talking podcasts this morning. Mike, good morning. And let me start with the basic question. Why do I need to have a podcast?
Uh, that's a great question. I was not ready for that question out of the gate. But listen, podcasting for me, when I started it almost 5 years ago, has literally, and I say this with all sincerity, changed my life. It has given me access to new friends that do really cool things. It's helped me personally kind of find my voice and get comfortable in conversation and all that. But really, it comes down to something like if you're passionate about something and you want to talk about it more, start a podcast. If you're a business owner and want to, generate some more leads or develop some marketing materials or whatever, start a podcast. I think people kind of get uh kind of shy away from the fact that like they see huge names and stars having their own podcast and think that you have to get millions and millions of downloads per episode to actually like make it a living. But I am living proof that you can make it work by doing something even just generally like a local podcast. I mean, we've made that work for the last 3 years, and it's been a lot of fun.
So, how do I start a podcast then?
Uh, Find something that you're passionate about and put together a concept, right? And like I say that very loosely because I am not one to plan at all. My first ever show that I started, we just kind of launched it and I figured it out as I went. I was not a podcast listener and really still am not because we spend a lot of time editing and all that. So I'm like constantly listening that way. But find something you're passionate about, keep working on it, and then develop like what you want the show's voice to be. And now that may be a little bit different from the beginning parts of what it looks like at the beginning. If you look at some of my earlier episodes, they are garbage compared to what we do now. But understanding that and being able to kind of adapt and find like your core audience and your community that you want to speak to. And it could be a solo show, it could be an interview-based show, it could be anything. You could do something with a friend and do a co-hosted show. There's a lot of options, and it's just a matter of turning the mics on and hitting record and seeing what you get.
So, you and I both have a baseball background. So, if I were going to start a podcast right off the top of my head, I think, well, I'll do something about baseball. But there
Sure.
must be thousands upon thousands of baseball podcasts. So now I need to find that niche where
Yeah.
I can go. How difficult is that?
It's honestly not entirely that difficult. You know what I mean? Like when you really start to dig down and see, like your baseball background is very specific to you. So you could talk about things that most other people cannot, even if they're doing like, a Yankee podcast or a general MLB podcast or a local sports podcast. There's all different kinds of things that you can start to do. And it's just a matter of being comfortable within that niche and being able to talk about it, knowing that you need to talk about it every week or every other week or once a month, whatever your cadence winds up being. For us, our niche obviously is New Jersey. That's pretty niche when you really start to dig down on like what most national, international podcasts do. But for us, we make it work, and it's big enough where we never run out of content. We will never run out of content. We're 150 episodes in at this point. So it's just a matter of like continuing to find the riches and the niches, and finding people that speak to or like to listen to what you're actually putting out there and knowing that at the beginning you may not get much traction, but over time, once people start to find you and check you out and learn about what you're doing and like what you're doing, then you'll start to see things start to pick up for sure.
Equipment wise, it's pretty basic. You need a microphone, probably a laptop. You could start, I guess, on YouTube, so you don't even have to worry about where to host it. You could just start that way.
Yeah.
But it seems pretty simple if I just want to get started.
Yeah, honestly, when I first started, like first started, my original show was my old laptop and these headphones. That's literally all I had. Just like regular plug-in Apple headphones and my Mac, and that's all I used. Over time, I got a USB mic, and then eventually, when I started Greetings from the Garden State, I bought these mics, these Rode Pod mics, and a little Zoom PodTrack P4 mixer. And we did that mostly because we are mobile and we want to be able to take our stuff on the road. But equipment wise, people sometimes get hung up on like, what am I going to get the best sound out of? And honestly, like most mics at this point in time in the technological evolution of man are pretty great, and you're going to get good sound to a degree no matter what. And then obviously like the editing side of it is a big part of what we as podcasters do. So being able to get comfortable in GarageBand or Audacity or whatever platform you're going to use to edit, That's another big thing too, which will make it sound even better.
So now I've started my podcast. I've got the basics down for it. I found my niche. How important is consistency and putting out an episode, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly? How important is that?
It is probably the most important thing that you will ever do. So you could have a show that sounds bad, maybe not bad, but like doesn't have high end, super professional audio quality, but release every week and get into people's routines. Like that is the biggest thing that I could possibly stress as far as like when you're actually trying to grow an audience and develop a following, people like building things into their routine. So that, for example, for me, we release every Tuesday. For the first probably year, we were releasing Mondays, and eventually I stopped doing that because I'm a guy that waits to the last minute to do my editing, and I had to stop, wanted to stop editing on Sundays. Um, but when we made that shift, we did see like a little bit of a drop for like a minute, and then once we started getting back into the Tuesday routine, that's something that we started to do. Like that's a weird thing. This is a weird thing that I do, but I know a lot of other podcasters do this. We release our episodes at 3 o'clock in the morning, which sounds ridiculous. Like who's up at 3 o'clock in the morning? But when you personally, like I know for 18 years, you were getting up at 3:45 or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is. We're there for you. So if you want to take us on your drive to work, we got you. Don't worry about it. If you're a 5 a.m. wake up, do a workout, and want to listen to us, there's another way to build you into the routine. So that's where consistency comes in. And that is like a major thing for what any podcaster does, because listeners love consistency and building a podcast into their daily routine.
One of the things that you and I were talking about before we came on the air was how long podcasters actually stick with it. And it's surprisingly short.
Yeah, most new podcasts, and this is just like one of my favorite stats that I love to regurgitate, is the fact that most new podcasts never make it past episode 7. So that means people like to think that they'll turn the mics on, start recording with their buddy or their friend or whatever, and people come in droves. All these advertisers will come out of the woodwork and start paying them a bunch of money because they're hilarious, and how could anybody not want to listen? But when you really start to dig down and realize how much goes into editing, marketing, all that kind of stuff, there's so much extra that goes into it beyond just turning the mics on and hitting record. And you don't want to find yourself just sitting there shouting into a vacuum, and people get frustrated and they're like, this isn't working. I'm done. So they do it for basically 2 months and then they're out. So if you make it past episode 7, you are in a very elite category of people that have stuck it out for a longer time than most.
How do I make money with my podcast? I know a lot of people would want to do that.
Sure. So I get asked this question quite a bit, and we do fine as far as podcast advertisers. Like the New Jersey Lottery is our title sponsor, and we're very thankful for them. And they are a big driver of revenue for the show. But that's because my show is driven by advertisers. When I had my old show, which was part of my old full-time job, I was having people on, excuse me, to basically give them a platform, like clients, networking partners, to generate deals for my business. So when you really start looking at making money from a podcast, you need to dial in what the actual goal is. Do you want advertisers? Because a lot of times that takes a long time to show value, to show advertisers what you can bring to the table. But then at the same time, you start looking at someone that's, I don't know, let's just take, for example, a realtor. And all of a sudden they put out realtor or real estate related episodes or whatever. They could just put out a block of 8 and never do any more, but use that as kind of like marketing material for people and clips and all that kind of stuff. And then showing those to potential clients. If I can get you a client that's going to pay you $10,000 in your business, I feel like that's a pretty good deal. You know what I mean? And that making money that way from a podcast, something that is much more lucrative and consistent than maybe an advertiser can. So that's how I would frame that question.
We hear about artificial intelligence all the time these days. How does AI factor into what you do?
We use AI quite a bit, and I'm not ashamed to say that. We do stuff with whether it's some audio editing, kind of helping us because we record in sometimes not audio friendly environments. So we use some AI tools to help us kind of clean up some of the audio. We do some copy that we write on Instagram posts and different things like that. You'll see some of the ones. We always go back and make sure that it has a human voice to it, of course. But as an entrepreneur and a small business owner and someone that has basically no team. Using AI is something that's very important to what I do. Obviously, you need to take it within reason and use it the right way. And we were also talking about off mic that you see podcasts generated by AI now. That's not us. I mean, like I'm literally the one that's recording these episodes, and I think there will always be, a platform for people to actually host a podcast, and AI can only do so much. But it's like one of those things. I've seen it online or whatever, and it's like a meme, and it says people that are afraid that AI is going to take their jobs. It's not AI that's going to take your job. It's someone that knows how to use AI. That's the person that's going to take your job. So it's just a matter of like using it the right way, using it to your benefit, and making sure that it's helping you kind of reach that audience and make your show something that people actually want to listen to.
I actually heard an AI podcast the other day. Two bots, they were not human, they were two bots discussing Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. And I was blown away by how it sounded because you really, really had to listen closely to discern that these were not real people talking about
Yeah.
this book, Mike.
Yeah, a friend of mine sent me something very similar. Like she was preparing for a job interview and sent me something that she just found when she was going through some of her prep, and she was using some AI tools to help her prepare. And I was it's hard to really describe the emotions that I felt because it's like it's really weird and it's kind of screwed up and messed up, and it's just like it's bizarre to a degree, and you really need to kind of like you said, really dial in and make sure that you like, okay, this is actually an AI driven podcast. Like these sound like real people, but there's certain nuances to what they're doing and what they're saying that makes it sound not that way. But at the same time, there will be a moment, I'm sure, where it will be really difficult to discern between an actually hosted episode and an AI driven episode. So it's just a matter, I guess, of what you want to support, real people or robots.
Just like
Yeah.
anything else these days, if you're doing something, you want people to be able to find you, whether it's web-based, and SEO, search engine optimization, is a big keyword that people who put content on the internet deal with. How important is SEO in terms of a podcast?
Oh, I mean, consistency. If consistency is number one, SEO and trying to figure out ways to get your stuff in front of people and search, search engine optimization and all that is huge, because I think people fail to realize that when you put an audio version of something online, there's no text behind it unless you're uploading a corresponding transcript to that audio file. There's no text, so there's nothing for Google or a search platform to actually search on. So then next thing you know, you're putting this audio file out there, even if it's laden. You just said every SEO driven word you could possibly think of. Uh, it can't search that. It can't search an audio file. So you have to actually do some legwork, whether it's on your website, whether it's within your show notes, whether it's adding a transcript to the episode itself when you do upload it. There's a bunch of different ways you can kind of start adding on. We do a lot of things kind of on the back end, like with, like adding transcripts to our website, but kind of in a different page where no one can really see that, to kind of help push some of the search engine stuff that we have in front of people. So it's super important. And one of the things that I think that why most new podcasts do fail is because there's so many things. Like you and I could probably have this episode for another 2 hours, but I know we're limited for time about all the things that kind of go into a show, and what a show is all about, and how you get it in front of people, and how you make money from that show. There's so many different nuances to it, but it's just a matter of finding something you're passionate about and then putting the legwork in on the back end.
We're going to have to do a part two on this, Mike, because this has
Yeah.
been fascinating and there's a lot of ground to cover. Mike Ham from Greetings from the Garden State. You can check him out every week at greetingsfromthegardenstate.com. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Jim.